So today is the fourth of a series of marketing seminars that I've been doing. This is Marketing 104, and it's specifically going to hone in on marketing your listings. Now, I have done three other seminars in this marketing seminar series. They will be up on Excel as a learning path within the next couple of weeks. The first one was on farming, then I did online marketing and sphere of influence. I definitely encourage you to go back and look at some of those. We are building on the knowledge, but these are also individual standalone seminars too. A lot of valuable information in all of this. So, marketing your listings. Listings are gold. I know you've probably heard something similar to that before. There's a lot of different sayings which kind of go along those lines, and there's a reason for it. If you have listings and you work them properly, you should be able to generate a lot of runoff business from those listings, right? If you can get business off of existing business, that's the gravy train leaving the station. I love this gift that I put in here. And the gravy train, it won't stop as long as you keep putting in the work. So, in order to keep that gravy train rolling, you need to step up to the plate when it comes to marketing your listing. It's not a self-serving thing to say this too, because by optimizing your listing marketing, your marketing strategy for your listing, you're maximizing exposure for your client, creating the most demand for their home, right? It's just a pleasant byproduct that if you're doing this well, it also gets that gravy train rolling and gives you extra exposure as an agent to show everyone else in the world how great of a job you do for everybody else, right? So this is the most important thing that I really wanted to get everybody thinking about as I'm doing the seminar is you really want to knock it out of the park on all of your listings. And if you do it properly, you can keep that gravy train rolling. So, in order to be firing on all cylinders with your marketing strategy, it's really important to make sure that you have some sort of consistency in what you're providing to your sellers. This is definitely a point that I'm about to say that a lot of people may disagree with. But that being said, most high end producers that I know swear by this philosophy. And this is what this is: it doesn't matter how big or small the listing is, you want to knock it out of the park with consistent marketing on each one. Right. A lot of people look at smaller listings with not a lot of commission potential and be like, okay, well, maybe I can get away with taking snapshots with my iPhone on this one instead of doing proper professional photography. That's not the mindset you should be in. You should make sure you do the same for everything that you're doing because, yeah, it might eat into your commission, especially on those smaller ones. But if you're thinking bigger picture, you're using these listings as a springboard to not only do your client justice by giving them the maximum exposure, but you're also trying to get flow through business from this one. So see it as an opportunity to make more opportunities down the road. So everyone should have a standard operating procedure for their listing marketing. And I know most of you probably don't, or maybe you've got one in the back of your head, but you haven't formalized it before. From the moment you get invited to a listing presentation to the closing and even beyond, you should have a scripted workflow. Right? Standardizing this workflow, it has a lot of benefits. It leads to consistent output, less mistakes, and just a lot faster, more efficient use of your time, and it makes for a very well-oiled machine. So if you haven't ever officially put together a standard operating procedure for your, we'll call it your seller journey, the next time you have a listing, just jot down everything you do along the way, right? And you turn that into a checklist and that becomes your standard operating procedure. It's very important to have something like this because when you sit down in a listing presentation, you can sit and be like, hey, this is all the things I do. Here's my offering. Here's my not your standard operating procedure, but your standard market offering that you can show your client, right? And you do the same thing for everyone. You knock it out of the park every time. So today I'm going to present my strategy for listings. Now, I want everyone to understand this isn't like the be all end all. This isn't necessarily what you should do for your strategy, but it gives you a bit of like a launching point, maybe some thought, like food for thought about how you can develop your strategy if you don't already have one. Okay. It just gives you that good place to start when crafting that own strategy for yourself. So here's a bit of a timeline for a listing. It starts on the left side with the listing agreement, right? Goes all the way through to the list date, up to where the home is sold and beyond. Okay, I'm going to go into some of the topics of what happens along this timeline. Not in a lot of detail yet, because I'm going to be going to each one shortly in following slides. But just quickly, after a listing agreement is signed, the first thing that you do is you prepare the home for listing, right? Uh, Decluttering, staging, cleaning, that sort of thing. 1 week prior to listing date, and these are just rough timelines, guys. You order Spotlight marketing package, which I'm going to explain what that is in a bit. You get your photography, videography, all that kind of stuff done. You get everything ready so you can produce your marketing material. Once that's all done, the photography comes in. You can send out things like just listed postcards a few days before the listing goes live because you have to adhere to the coming soon rules that have been implemented this year. You can start publicly promoting your listing. A few of those things I'm going to talk about today is open house door knocking strategies, promoting to realtor groups, and promoting on social media. Finally, you list your property, comes out on MLS. You're hopefully doing open houses like the weekends following your list date. Then after the property sells, and hopefully fast, right? Because you've done a great job, you can do some just sold door knocking, postcards, that sort of thing, your follow up to the actual sale of the home. Now, if you do all of this, you can have a really set beginning to end strategy. You're saturating a neighborhood with your presence, with your branding. You're going to find more business flowing through. Okay, so just the first point I'm going to talk about here is preparing the listing and staging. So as soon as you get that listing agreement signed, you should start getting the home ready for listing. This isn't rocket science, right? Most of this cost is taken on by the homeowner. Your job, though, is to convince them that it's worth every penny. And when it comes to staging in particular, that's what I'm going to spend most of the slide talking about. I get the same question like all the time. Like, should I pay for staging, right? As an agent, is it your responsibility? Like, what do you do but with paying for staging, Linus? And it's a very loaded question. It's completely up to you. A lot of it depends on the market that you're in, like the geographic market you're in, and the house. Staging can also quickly gobble up a lot of your commission or all of your commission if you're not careful. So my suggestion is usually like if you have a good rapport with a stager, most will do a staging consult for free, especially if you're doing a lot of business with them. And that'll include like a report and recommendations to do with staging and associated costs, that kind of thing. And the stager coming in, they can often be really good at being the bad guy for you to be like, hey, like you really need to do all these things to get your house ready for sale. So you have a really good stager in your pocket. That's a great route to go. So I know some stagers will charge for this consult, especially if you don't send them a lot of business yet. So my advice when you're coming up with your marketing package that you give to clients is that you offer that you'll pay for the staging consult. Again, whether or not it comes out of your pocket or if it's free, doesn't matter. And then from there, you use that report to convince the seller that it's a good idea, a good investment for them to pay for staging. Staging is one of those marketing items that helps both the seller, right, get more money for the listing, and it looks good on you for having a staged listing. And again, that's a lot of what we're talking about today is not only marketing your listing for exposure, but also making yourself look good so you can get that flow through business. When people see the listing through open houses or whatever, they're like, hey, man, like Linus is a great job. Like, look at all the staging. He's done a really good job with this home. I want him to sell my home as well. As with all these things, like I said, the better job you do, the better it reflects on you and the more business it turns into for you for flow through clients. Next thing on the marketing timeline is approximately 1 week prior to the listing date. And this is one of those things where you want to give yourself as much breathing time as possible. Is where you get the photography and your Spotlight marketing package ordered. Now, I'll talk about Spotlight specifically in a bit. I'm going to start with photography. And I always say like 1 week prior to listing date, but always try and give yourself as much time as possible. Like, yeah, you can probably even do it within a couple of days. I know like a ton of you obviously have done photography a couple of days before listing a property, but the more time you give yourself to make sure that things, like if there's anything that goes wrong, maybe it's like a horrible day for weather, the photographer cancels, the photography for whatever reason takes a couple days to come to you where you're expecting it next day. Like any of those little hiccups in the workflow can be accommodated for if you deal with this well in advance. So when you're setting up a marketing timeline, this is a good thing to sit down with a client and go through the whole thing with them and be like, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. I know maybe you want to get to market like a little bit faster than this. We want to make sure everything's done properly. And we give ourselves some extra time in case there are any hiccups along the way, because a lot of times there are just things out of your control. Okay. So setting clear timelines and expectations is great. Don't feel the need to like rush to market, because usually when you do a rush job, you can't do a really good job. Okay, so before I go into the Spotlight program, and again, I'm going to go to that in detail shortly, I talk about photography a bit. And I mean, it's kind of a no brainer these days to pay for professional photography. But that being said, not all agents do for every listing, right? You may have a listing that's like a lower priced one that you think's overpriced, that's never going to sell. And you're like, oh man, like, is this worth like investing money in to like put into photography? And there's that temptation to be like, oh, let's pull out the iPhone camera, snap a few shots, and do that, right? But I've got an anecdote for you. We had an agent literally last month in Kingston who was the beneficiary of another agent from a different brokerage who did exactly that. They felt like the listing was overpriced. They're like, okay, I'm just going to snap a few shots with my iPhone camera. They did that. And guess what? Day one rolled around, they got fired right away. Our agent was next in line. They ended up getting the listing, right? They did an amazing job with photos, iGuide, everything. The client was so happy with them. But that first client, or so first agent, like all they had to do was take professional photos to like avoid getting fired, right? Like there is that expectation in the market for professional photos. And myself personally, again, with consistency, I would get Matterport iGuide for all your listings. Do professional photographs for all your listings as well. Videography, if you can, if you have that as part of your value package. Um, Matterport iGuide, great. They come with floor plans, huge asset, saves a lot of time for measurements and everything like that. I'd even do Matterport iGuide for smaller listings too, right? Like I said, it's all about the consistency, putting out a good product for both you and your client. You want to make sure you can knock it out of the park for everyone. Drone photography is another one where I do wherever is possible. A lot of agents would shy away from doing this full Monty package, right? With the drone photography, Matterport iGuide, the big, this one just needs listing photos. But like I said, if you want to be that top end agent, having that consistency, showing that you do everything for every client, that's what helps that gravy train keep going, right? It keeps the momentum going. It's important to give every listing your best effort. Again, not everyone would agree with me, but most top producers would. So, getting into Spotlight, I'm quickly going to go over this program. It's a listing marketing package. I know not a lot of you have probably even heard of the Spotlight package before. But it's a marketing package that you can order for your listings. It's ordered on a listing by listing basis, so you can pick and choose which listings you order for. It's exclusive to Century 21 agents, which is amazing. I know that the people that run Spotlight get questions all the time from Remax, Royal LePage, Sutton, all the different brands. They come to them and they have to say, listen, we've got an exclusivity agreement with Century 21. We can't service your listings. So this is something that's a unique value proposition to you being a Century 21 agent. So what this does is if you purchase this, it's a way to knock out of the park for your sellers. This is a good way to go if that's what you're trying to achieve. It's a unique website for all of your media, your pictures, your videos, your floor plans, your feature sheet, your Matterport, everything. And it also comes with a person, a concierge that will help with coordinating all of these things, even booking the photography in most areas that we service. So the website itself, it's got some distinct advantages that you don't see on other websites. I'm just going to point out a few of them. If you have any sort of additional questions about Spotlight, let me know. I'm pretty well versed in everything, but I'm just going to give like a bit of like a brief overview of it. But this website, it's natively translated into 12 different languages. And I'm not talking like real time, you open up in your browser and Google pops up and saying like, hey, do you want to translate this into Indian or whatever, right? These are native translations. So if anyone is searching in Google for a home in an area and they're not a native English speaker, Google's going to give priority to this listing web page because it's the only show in town that does this. I still have never come across any other listing web pages that do this. We actually have it posted to Google as, okay, this page is in Italian, it's in Portuguese, it's in Spanish, it's in all the different languages that people may be searching for in Canada. Spotlight also helps with Google placement in English language searches too, because everything is indexed by Google in advance of listing the property. Google actually earmarks this listing web page as the canonical original content. And this gives a huge SEO boost. And I'm sure you've all seen it before too. Like you list your property and you Google the address, and then what comes up on the first page of Google, you've got like 20 different agents from 20 different brokerages that are showcasing your listing with all your listing content, your listing photos, and everything. And you're not number one on the list, right? That the reason for that is because Google, once your listing's posted on MLS, everyone has access to the information. So everyone's posting on their websites. Google doesn't know at that point who the original web page was because everyone launched it at essentially the same moment. So it's more just kind of luck about who gets indexed first. So by indexing it a few days in advance before everybody has the access to the information, Google knows that you are distinctly the first canonical source of the information. You're the first ones with this information, and hence you get that SEO boost. Also on this webpage, there's a spotlight on the neighborhood, which is amazing. It includes a write-up on the neighborhood, some photos of the neighborhood, school and amenity finder. It's got a commute tool showing how the commute times from the listing. It really dives into selling the neighborhood as well as the home. And this is a page that's great to show during listing presentation. You show, hey, like this is all the stuff that I'm gonna be doing. This is where your listing hub is gonna be on the internet. And in this case, 78 Cardinal Crescent is the address. We would have gotten www.78cardinal.com for promotion of this listing. So you get a unique URL for the listing itself. Just a couple of things I want to point out. There's also a chat with me live widget in the bottom right hand corner. This is actually the primary leads capture tool for this listing web page. It looks like the agent's there, like ready to talk to you, right? So people who come in, prospective buyers, they have any sort of questions, they want to book a showing, they'll chat in the chat with me live section, and this drives a surprising number of leads. Once someone puts something in the chat too, by the way, it pops up and says, in case we get disconnected, what's your name, phone number, email address? So you capture the lead just in case you aren't there. And once they do hit the send button, they send you that message. It actually gets texted directly to you, and you can text them back so you can have a two-way conversation. You don't have to be sitting in front of a computer. All in all, though, the Spotlight package is a great because it's a place you can have all your media collected and live on the web all in one place. Like I said before, it's your listing hub. One other thing that Spotlight does for you too, I mean, there's lots of other things, but there's just one other thing, is that Spotlight actually syndicates or pushes out your listing to several different websites to increase the exposure for your listing. Several different websites, several different social media platforms, again, with the purpose of driving exposure. This slide here that I'm showing up here, I actually took this from Spotlight's like listing presentation slide deck, which you're given when you order a Spotlight package. This is great to take out and use in your own listing presentations too. It's probably one of the most popular slides they have in their slide deck because it shows the reach that you have to syndicate their listing. And I trust me, no other agents in town are going to be syndicating to all the same places that you are. So it shows that you're going above and beyond for your client. Okay, getting back to the marketing timeline, you've got photography, you got Spotlight, everything's set up online. Now we can start, now you got the photography, you can get into some of the physical print stuff. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is just listed postcards. So just listed postcards is actually something that can be done through, again, the Spotlight program, but it doesn't matter who you use for this. It's just important that you do it, right? There's a billion companies out there. Again, Spotlight's probably one of the most cost-effective ways and the easiest lifts. They handle it end to end and it's pretty cheap. But that being said, you can use whoever you want. But one thing I will say is as soon as you can, you're going to want to send out just listed postcards. And you have two options of where to send them to. And there's two different schools of thought here. You can send them out to either or both of your farm area, if you have a farm area set up, or the neighborhood of the listing, wherever the listing is. Again, there's arguments for both. For your farm area, the goal is another touch point for the area that's getting saturated with all your marketing, right? It shows that you're busy to get that additional touch point. They see every time you've got a listing come up, which is hopefully a lot of times, and they'll get that marketing piece dropped off in their mailbox. For the neighborhood, it's to showcase the neighbor's listing and pique the interest of the people in the area. Combined with the other stuff I'm going to be talking about, the open house door knocking, and the open houses you're running in the neighborhood, the post sale door knocking, it's really going to be exposing you and your listings exposure in the neighborhood. You're really saturating the neighborhood with your presence, and that's the goal of all of this. Just as a note too, because this often becomes a pain point for a lot of people who don't understand this. Either their clients don't understand it, the agent doesn't understand it. If it's the first time they've been sending out these cards, it can take a couple of weeks from when you actually drop these off at Canada Post, or a company drops off Canada Post for you, for them to be delivered in the neighborhood. Spotlight and other services, they can take care of the printing and delivery for you. And usually that turnaround is pretty quick. You're talking a few days. But once it's dropped off at Canada Post, you're now on Canada Post's timeline. And I've seen it take as long as 2 weeks to get from the Canada Post's front desk to the door of wherever they're getting delivered to. Canada Post works on their own timeline, so just be really aware. A lot of cases, you might even get these out. The house may already be sold by the time they come out. That's okay. The point is that you get a touch point. Obviously, you want to try and get out as early as possible to avoid that. But if it doesn't work out that way, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so now we're getting into 3 days to the listing date. This is where you can now publicly market your home. Everything else was just kind of like leading up to this, getting everything prepared. There's three things I'm going to talk about today. And there's a billion things you can do. But these are the three that I really want to focus on today. Open house door knocking. I'll explain that in a second. Realtor group outreach and social media blasting. Okay, just as a reminder, you cannot publicly promote a listing more than 3 days in advance of it going to market. That's one of the new coming soon rules that came into effect. I can't remember exactly, but sometime around January. So this open house door knocking strategy, this counts as publicly advertising, even though it is one-on-one conversations you're going to be having. So open house door knocking. Again, I mentioned before, one of your primary goals during these few weeks that you're working a neighborhood, and that's what you're doing, you're working a neighborhood, is that you want to saturate the neighborhood with your presence. I really want to get that stuck in your mind. You want to saturate your presence in the neighborhood. This both creates that demand for your listing, right? But it also promotes you, and people are going to start getting comfortable with you being present in the neighborhood. Just listed postcards, right? A couple door knocking sessions, open houses, just sold postcards. That's all part of the strategy here to saturate the neighborhood. It's really going to be hard after this is all done for anyone in the area not to know who you are. And this is your goal. Okay, full stop. Once one of the most important pieces to this puzzle, and not many agents actually do this, even though we do promote this quite a bit at our brokerage, is to door knock the neighborhood a few days before the listing goes live. Okay. And it's not just your standard door knocking, it's to invite everybody out to an exclusive open house that you're going to be putting on for the neighborhood. This open house was typically a couple hours before your actual first public open house. You put together an invite letter. I've got a sample that on the screen here. Doesn't matter how you do it, but try and make it look like a personalized letter. That always has the most impact, right? It invites the homeowner to an exclusive open house for the neighbors, right? This isn't a great item of value. Again, you knock on the door, you have this conversation with them, and you have this page ready as the invitation to give them and it's a great leave behind if they don't answer the door as well. You invite them to the event. And during that conversation, you say, hey, we're just inviting you out to this open house. You ask them if they know of anyone looking to move to the area. After all, this is your best chance to pick your new neighbors, right? That's a great narrative, great ice-breaking conversation. See if they're planning on moving anytime soon, right? Try and start that conversation. Just use the open house as an icebreaker to get to know them, to gain trust and rapport. And then after that, you see if there's any way you can help them, right? With whatever the real estate needs are. After all, like, you are quickly becoming the expert in this neighborhood, and that's what you want people to see. You likely know everything that's for sale in the area, everything that's sold recently. You've got all that stuff in your back pocket, and you've got that hot new listing in the area that people may want to know more about or have questions about. So I did talk to an agent not too long ago who took this one step further, and instead of just having an exclusive open house for the neighbors, they actually threw a barbecue for the neighborhood. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. People love free food. If you feed it, they will come, right? That's a commonly known thing. So it'll definitely help with the draw too. It's a great opportunity to get more of a turnout. Your sellers are going to love it. It's a great opportunity to mingle and chat with everyone in the area, get your name out there, build a little bit of hype for the home. Obviously, you have to have a venue that makes sense for that. But most homes would have at least some area in the backyard or even the front yard that you could do something along these lines. If you're a busy agent too, by the way, like a lot of busy agents, like, oh, okay, honestly, I don't have the time to do all the door knocking for like all my listings. Like, that's okay. This is an opportunity. There's a lot of hungry agents out there at all of our offices who would love to be able to take these opportunities for you. You can tap them on the shoulder every time you get a new listing. Maybe you have like a partnering agent that you do this with and someone who's new and hungry. They can go out and door knock the area. They can host the first open house. They can do all this for you. So it's part of your service package for all of your clients, even if you don't have the time anymore. You can leverage other agents' time to do this for you. And if you're a new agent looking to do this, this is a good opportunity to be like, hey, like, have you considered doing this door knocking strategy for your listings? I'd love to be that agent who does that for you, right? Find an agent who's already been in the industry, has a lot of listings, and start getting on their side to do this for them. So continuing with the marketing timeline, again, we're still looking at a few days before listing. I'm going to talk a little bit about social media. So it's important to blast your listing out on social media. Right? It's not hard to create social bricks. Canva's made this really easy. There's a lot of expectation from clients now too to make sure that you do postings on social. That being said, it's really important to remember the purpose of social media and what it achieves. I did talk about this in some of my previous marketing seminars, but I'm just going to reiterate it now. Unless you're an influencer and you have like thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, your social media reach is likely limited to friends, family, probably a lot of realtors because realtors love following other realtors, right? And past clients. It's very rare that someone who's going to see these posts, these just listed, just sold, whatever, like these kind of real estate posts, are going to actually want the house that you're listing. It's not unheard of because I mean it actually happened not too long ago at our office here in Kingston, but it is pretty rare. Okay, so it's not the primary focus. Obviously, like every little bit helps. I don't want to take away from that, but the main reason to post to social is that this is a touch point for your sphere of influence. Your friends, followers, that's your sphere of influence. You're not a social media influencer. You don't have a reach to people you don't know. Likely you know everybody who's a friend of you on Facebook. So these are your sphere of influence. It's very similar to like a newsletter program, right? It's a way of getting in front of your sphere of influence and gaining some exposure. It's a touch point. Just also one thing again, watch my previous marketing seminar which talks about social media, but you want to make sure when you're posting on social media, you're not just posting these social bricks and that's it. You need to put some personalized content, some more personal interest items in there of things that you do on a regular basis, whether it's you're going jogging, lifestyle things, you pictures your family, your animals, whatever, the stuff that gets more engagement. You want to make sure a lot of that stuff finds its way into your feed so that when you pepper in these just listed social bricks, they'll get more engagement. The algorithm's going to like you a lot more because people are engaging with most of your posts. If you just post these social bricks about just listed, just sold, et cetera, open house here, open house there, the algorithm is quickly going to learn that you're an account that not a lot of people engage with. So the algorithm is going to stop pushing your content to as many people as you'd like. So you want to make sure you help get the algorithm to like you by posting stuff that people want to consume so that when you do post these other pieces of content, they still get fed that as well. And then finally, my key point here too is, and I know it can be a little bit more time consuming and that's okay if you just post the static stuff, but where possible, use video. Okay. Try and make your posts into reels or short form videos. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. It can be very organic, just off the cuff posts. But engagement is so much better for video than it is for static images, and it will improve your reach. I understand not everyone's comfortable in front of the camera. These social bricks that are static images are fine, but if you can, start considering a video strategy. And the next thing I'm going to talk about, and this is another underused tool, is realtor groups and marketing to them. A lot of regions, and this is very dependent on your market, have Facebook groups or other groups where agents can promote their upcoming listings. So I live in Kingston. We have a Facebook group for Kingston realtors only where you can promote your listings. We also, at Central Heritage Group, we've got a Facebook group for all of our sales reps. We also have Broker Bay, where you can post your have in the haves and wants sections to promote your listings too. You want to try and get that listing exposure before you post to MLS if you can. Again, follow the rules of whatever these Facebook groups are that you're a member of, um, because you can get extra interest before you list it, but also this gives value to those agents that you're promoting it to because they now have information that isn't public that they can share with their clients, right? They can say, hey, like I just got wind that this new listing's coming up. I think it might be perfect for you. I think I can get you in before it even comes to market, right? So other agents love hearing about these coming soon listings too because it helps them on their side as well. So it's a bit of a synergistic sharing process. And one other great thing about sharing to agents is that if you share to one agent, they probably have several buyers on the go, right? So by sharing to one person, you're actually sharing to like a branch of more people. You've got a wider reach, a wider audience from that one share. So agents are always the best to share to because it can potentially snowball into their sphere as well. Next, I'm going to talk about listing day. And it may seem like a bit of a no brainer, but when you list a property, the listing goes live on MLS and realtor.ca, right? The importance of this and being part of your strategy should not be overlooked. This is a part of every realtor strategy, right? So a lot of people just kind of discount it as part of their marketing package. But this is the most important piece of marketing that you're going to be doing for your listing, full stop, is getting it on realtor.ca and MLS, right? And this fact, it gets lost in the noise of all the promotion that you're doing. I'm posting a social, I'm posting here, I'm doing spotlight, I'm doing photos, whatever. Oftentimes you forget to promote the fact that you are promoting it on MLS as well. And 95% of your exposure of your listing and 95% of the reach is going to be through MLS and realtor.ca. Now, I just made that number up. So before anyone starts quoting that, it's more of just a prove a point number, right? I don't know what the actual number is. I could probably figure it out. But the point is that everything else that you're doing to promote your listing may feel like a lot, but what you're actually doing is you're only promoting it for that extra 5% of reach. Now, that's still important. You still want to do all the things because every eyeball that gets on your listing helps, but don't lose focus on the fact that most of your exposure is going to come through MLS. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of agents don't focus as much time as they should on making sure everything is done properly and perfectly for day zero on MLS. Make sure your listing is input properly. The best photos are selected. You've got photos. A lot of people post it without photos on day one, which I never understood. And you've got a listing description that syncs to your target demographic. You should make sure the listing description is perfect on day one. Also, make sure your virtual tour links and your attachments are all attached correctly. The amount of listing exposure you get on day zero and day one of your listing is the most you're going to get for your listing. So you want to make sure that presents perfectly right off the hop, because if it doesn't, people just push it to the back burner. They don't see it again. They've discounted it as a listing they're not interested in. You got to make sure that it's perfect on day one. Another thing that's important to remember when struggling to sell a listing, just being on MLS should be enough to sell the property. I know it goes kind of counterintuitive to all the other stuff I've been saying, but if it's not selling, it's usually because there's something wrong with the price, right? Again, this is a full stop moment. There's probably something wrong with the price. Yes, that extra 5% marketing exposure on social media, flyers, realtor groups, syndication sites, all that kind of stuff that helps and it's worth doing. But MLS is your primary value. Never forget that. And I know a lot of sellers usually come back to us and be like, hey, what are you doing to market my listing? Usually want to try and make sure that they understand and give a little bit of forward guidance that, hey, if things aren't going well, it's probably not a marketing issue. It's more likely a pricing issue, right? You want to make sure you give your clients forward guidance and preparation so they're not shocked if they have an overpriced listing on the market that there is no exposure. You can put as much marketing out there to sell their house for $1 million, but if it's only worth 500,000, no one in their right mind is going to buy it, right? So just remember that price is so important and a very important part of your marketing strategy. Okay, so Moving to the next bit, again, I've already talked about open houses and door knocking, so I'm not going to go over the open house portion. Obviously, you're going to be running as many open houses as you can. Um, Pam actually gives a really amazing open house seminar. It's on our YouTube as well as our Excel training channels. If you want to check out our Century on Heritage Group training YouTube channel, if you just look, you sort the videos by oldest to newest. It's literally the very first video on our YouTube training channel. Check it out. Pam used it as her primary pipeline back in the 80s and 90s when she was selling actively, and she like essentially wrote the textbook on how to do open houses properly. So if you want more information on that, that's a great place to look for a deep dive for that. The next thing I want to talk about is the just sold door knocking. This comes after everything has hopefully gone as smooth as butter, right? You've sold your listing hopefully really quickly because you picked the right price and everything too for this property, right? After you've sold the place firm, this is the perfect opportunity for another round of door knocking or even cold calling too, if you'd rather. You've already door knocked the neighborhood once, right? So this is really just the final icing on the cake of saturating the neighborhood with your presence. The other thing is during the second door knocking session, you're going to find that people are getting more comfortable with your presence in the area. They probably know the house was for sale, probably know it's sold. They may have some questions. They've seen you around. They've seen you doing the door knocking before. They may have gotten your just listed postcards in the past, right? People are going to be curious and they're going to want to know how things went. So there's going to be a lot of follow-up questions about, how much the house sell for, and how it went, right? How much interest or activity was there, because they've got a vested interest in the neighborhood because that property sale affects them materially. And this is the real kicker, is that through the selling process, you likely came across parties who looked at the house that didn't buy the place that are still interested in the neighborhood, right? You want to milk that as much as you can. If you had someone come through an open house, they're like, this isn't quite right for me. Now you've started to bring them into your sphere. Maybe you've set them up on a listing search. You can take their story and you can sell that story to the neighborhood. I've got a family who's looking to buy in this area. They really like the school district. They've got 3 kids. They're a lovely couple, and there isn't the right listing for them here. So you can go door to door and say, like, hey, like, do you know anyone who's looking to sell here? I've got someone who's looking to buy, right? It's kind of like the opposite of when you list a home and you've got a house to sell, you're looking for buyers. Here you've got a buyer, you're looking for sellers, right? You can do a sheet just like I've got up here on the screen. This is a very similar format to what I did for the door knocking for the open houses, that exclusive open house invitation. You can do another one with your consistent branding. I've got buyers or families looking for a home in the area. That's your icebreaker. You knock on that door, ask them, do you know anyone who might be looking to sell in the area? Maybe you're looking to sell, right? And you use that as a Kickstarter for the conversation. You can talk about the home you just sold around the corner. You can have that really naturally flowing conversation with them. And like I said, remember, this is just an icebreaker to start a conversation. Once you get them talking, and this is a really good icebreaker, then you can adapt the conversation to see how you can help that homeowner in the real estate market. All right. And that's about it for the presentation today. Really, it's not rocket science. The primary takeaway that I want you to get from this is when you have a listing, you want to saturate that neighborhood with your presence and have as many conversations with people in that neighborhood as possible. If you knock it out of the park, you do a good job, you have a lot of conversations, people are going to get impressed, right? You want to show everyone how far you go with your clients. You want to create that demand not only for your listing, but also for yourself. And that gravy train, it's going to leave the station and it's never going to stop.